What if I told you that in 1947 a man discovered something beneath his house that defied every law of physics we know? What if that discovery led to the disappearance of 37 people over the span of just 6 months? And what if the government covered it all up, leaving behind only classified documents that were accidentally declassified in 2003? This is the story of Harold Wickham and the Ascension Door. A story so disturbing that it was buried for over 50 years, a story about a staircase that led not down into darkness, but up into an impossible sky that should never have existed. Harold Wickham was a clockmaker living in the small town of Millbrook, Connecticut. He was 43 years old, lived alone, and had recently inherited his grandfather's house after the old man died under mysterious circumstances. The neighbors remembered Harold as quiet, methodical, and obsessed with precision. He rarely spoke to anyone, but when he did, he would mention hearing strange sounds coming from beneath his floorboards. On March 15, 1947, Harold decided to investigate these sounds. He pried up the wooden planks in his living room and discovered something that should have been impossible. Instead of finding dirt, pipes, or a basement, he found a perfectly crafted stone staircase spiraling upward into what appeared to be an endless void filled with clouds. Staircase was ancient, carved from a type of black stone that reflected no light. Each step was exactly 7 inches high and 12 inches deep. Harold counted them as he climbed. 27 steps up, the wooden ceiling of his house should have blocked his path. But there was no ceiling, only more stairs disappearing into a twilight sky that pulsed with an otherworldly aurora. Harold returned to ground level and called the only person he trusted, his neighbor, Margaret Chen, a retired nurse who had always been kind to him. Margaret was 62 years old and had seen enough in her career to not dismiss Harold's claims outright. When she came to his house and saw the impossible staircase for herself, she described feeling what she called a terrible homesickness for a place I'd never been. Margaret climbed 17 steps before she heard it. Music. Not quite human music, but something that made her bones vibrate in harmony with sounds that existed somewhere between a lullaby and a funeral dirge. She came back down immediately. But Harold was already planning to climb higher. Over the next 3 weeks, Harold documented everything. He took photographs, though most came out strangely distorted, showing impossible angles and shadows that fell upward. He measured the temperature, which dropped exactly 1 degree for every 5 steps climbed. He timed his ascents, discovering that time moved differently the higher he went. A 10-minute climb would take 23 minutes according to his watch when he returned. Harold's journal, later found by investigators, contained increasingly erratic entries. On March 31st, he wrote, "Reached step 112 today. The music is constant now. I can see structures in the clouds. Buildings that breathe. People who aren't people watching me climb. They want me to join them. I think I want to join them too." Margaret tried to convince Harold to seal up the staircase, to call the authorities, to do anything except continue climbing. But Harold had become obsessed. He would climb for hours each day, returning with stories of impossible vistas and whispered promises from the beings he encountered in the sky. On April 7th, Harold disappeared. Margaret found his front door unlocked, the hole in the living room floor wide open, and a single note on his kitchen table. "The music has stopped. I must make it start again." Margaret sealed the house and tried to forget what she had seen, but word had already spread through Millbrook. Harold's disappearance, combined with Margaret's fragmented accounts of an impossible staircase, had captured the imagination of the small community. Dr. Edwin Marsh, a professor of archaeology from Yale University, arrived in Millbrook on April 20th. He was researching local folklore for a book he was writing, and had heard rumors of Harold's discovery. Margaret reluctantly showed him the staircase, hoping an educated man could provide a rational explanation. Dr. Marsh climbed to step 50 before he encountered something that changed him forever. In his report to the university, he described meeting Harold on the stairs. But Harold was different. His eyes reflected the twilight sky above, and when he spoke, His voice harmonized with itself in impossible ways. Harold told Dr. Marsh that the staircase led to the space between spaces, where the music that holds reality together is composed. He explained that people who climbed high enough could join the celestial orchestra, becoming part of the fundamental frequency that keeps existence from collapsing into chaos. Dr. Marsh returned to ground level, deeply shaken. But like Harold, before him, he became obsessed. He brought colleagues, equipment, recording devices. Each person who climbed the stairs reported the same phenomena: the music, the impossible architecture in the clouds, and eventually, encounters with people who had climbed before them but were no longer quite human. Over the following months, 36 more people climbed Harold's staircase. University researchers, curious neighbors, government investigators who had been quietly monitoring the situation, all of them eventually chose to climb higher than they could return from. The last documented climber was Agent Sarah Kellerman, from what was then called the Office of Strategic Services. Her final radio transmission, recorded on September 22, 1947, was played during congressional hearings that remain classified to this day. I can see them all up here. Harold, Dr. Marsh, all of them. They're part of something beautiful now. The music is so beautiful. I understand why they stayed. I understand why I'm going to stay too. Margaret Chen, now the only surviving witness, was relocated by government agents and given a new identity. The house was demolished, but workers reported that the hole remained even after they poured concrete into it. The concrete would crack and crumble within days, revealing the black stone staircase still spiraling upward into an impossible sky. The site was eventually buried under 30 feet of earth and declared a hazardous waste area. Official records state that chemical contamination makes the land unsuitable for development. But documents leaked in 2003 reveal the truth. Motion sensors placed around the buried site regularly detect movement at depths that correspond exactly to the stair where the staircase once stood. Local seismologists have recorded strange acoustic anomalies emanating from the location. The sounds match no known natural phenomena, but they do share certain harmonic frequencies with the recordings made by Dr. Marsh's team in 1946. The same music that drew 37 people into an impossible sky continues to play beneath 30 feet of earth. Margaret Chen died in 1989 at the age of 104. Her final words, according to the nurse attending her, were, "I can hear the music starting again, it's time to climb." But the story doesn't end there. In 2007, construction workers building a new subdivision 3 miles from the original site broke through into a natural cavern system that shouldn't have existed according to geological surveys. Inside the largest cavern, they found 37 sets of human remains arranged in a perfect spiral pattern around a central depression in the rock. Each skeleton was positioned as if climbing invisible stairs. Carbon dating placed their deaths at 60 years earlier. Among the remains, investigators found Harold Wickham's pocket watch, still ticking despite being wound by no human hand for 6 decades. The cavern was sealed immediately, but 3 of the construction workers who discovered it have since disappeared. Security footage from the construction site shows them walking toward the sealed cavern entrance at 3:33 a.m. on different nights. They appear to be climbing invisible steps, their faces turned upward toward something the cameras cannot capture. The sealed cavern is monitored continuously. Every few months, ground-penetrating radar detects new formations inside, formations that appear to spiral upward through solid rock toward the surface, toward the sky. Today, the land where Harold Wickham's house once stood remains officially contaminated, but satellite imagery from the past 5 years shows something troubling. The earth above the buried staircase has begun to sink, forming a perfect spiral depression that grows deeper each year. Local residents report hearing music on still nights, music that seems to come from deep underground but sounds as if it originates in the sky above. Children in the area have begun drawing pictures of staircases that climb upward into clouds filled with smiling figures who look almost, but not quite, human. The question isn't whether Harold Wickham found something impossible beneath his house. The evidence proves he did. The question is whether it's still there, still climbing, still calling to anyone brave enough or foolish enough to listen to the music that plays between the spaces where reality grows thin. Some doors, once opened, can never truly be closed. Some staircases, once climbed, continue ascending long after the climber has disappeared. And some music, once heard, echoes in your dreams until you wake up one night to find yourself reaching for invisible steps that lead upward into an impossible skydot in Millbrook, Connecticut. On certain nights when the air is still and the sky is clear, people still report seeing figures climbing invisible stairs above the spot where Harold Wickham's house once stood. They climb steadily upward, their faces turned toward the stars, their movements keeping perfect time with music that only they can hear. The ascension door remains buried beneath 30 feet of earth. But earth, it seems, is no barrier for those who have already learned to climb between the spaces where reality bends. The music continues. The stairs still spiral upward, and somewhere in that impossible sky, above a buried doorway, 37 people continue their eternal ascent toward a destination that exists nowhere and everywhere at once. So the next time you hear unexplained music coming from beneath your floorboards, ask yourself this: are you brave enough to investigate? Or are you wise enough to leave some doors unopened? Because in Millbrook, Connecticut, 37 people learned to late that some discoveries are not meant for human minds to comprehend. The government files remain classified. The site remains sealed. But the music plays on, waiting for the next person, curious enough to listen, bold enough to climb, and foolish enough to believe they can return from a staircase that leads not down into earth, but up into an impossible sky, where the music that holds reality together is composed by an orchestra of the missing.